Our second reader is a writer and pre-amateur freestyle lap swimmer. He has published several essays and previously worked as a writing instructor, copywriter, and book critic for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, Time Out Chicago, The Believer, and others. He currently works for a Chicago software company called Jellyvision and lives in Albany Park with his wife Julie and his 2 sons. He's working on a collection of short fiction, and he voted today. Please welcome Tom Haley.
Creepy wedding.
How's that sound?
How's that?
Hello, thank you. This is a piece of short fiction that I wrote just for today. And it has no title. 1. Through a small speaker beneath a small screen in this small curtained-off booth, the voice of late actor Tom Selleck welcomes me to the Vote Vault single-occupant voting machine. Hi, Ralph, it says. Thanks for voting today. Let's get started. Tell me a little about yourself, starting with your address. A red LED indicates I am being recorded, and I say, my daughter Isabel, she's 7, she's down the hall at the moment, and wow, she used to ruin conversations. Like, just obliterate them. I'd say something feeble and dumb like, I'm getting old. And Isabel would reply along the lines of, technically, Dad, we all age at the same rate. The machine asks, how would you feel about that? I say, at the time, I guess I'd feel my blood pressure spike, and I'd say something rude like, oh really, we age at the same rate? Because I feel myself aging super fast, Isabel, like just during this conversation, I've aged 5 years. And she'd laugh and look at me like, with like this smile she used to get, and I trail off and the machine asks, when did that conversation occur? I say, well, that was just an example of the kind of conversation we used to have. About a year ago is when Isabel and I were still speaking, now we are not speaking. Also, here she comes back into the cafeteria, so stop recording. The Vote Vault single-occupant voting machine bloops, the red LED blinks off, a fan spins up somewhere deep inside. Isabel squeezed back into the booth with me now. She hands me my tiny screwdriver so I can pry off the panel under the microphone. I plug in my pocket drive and start downloading. 2. We're here every 3 weeks-ish, Isabel and me. It's a nice ritual, a father and daughter outing we both look forward to, and by we both look forward to, I mean I am required to come here for my job, and Isabel is too young to stay at home alone, so she accompanies me. Maybe she enjoys it, maybe she hates it, who knows? She's a child with no words and a face that no longer reveals anything. Tonight, Isabel sits in one corner of the Vote Vault single-occupant booth with her teddy bear Martha, Scotch tape strapping cards to its paws so they can play Go Fish while we wait for the download. I'm in the opposite corner sitting cross-legged so Isabel, Martha, and I can all fit in here. I'm winning marble time on my watch when the Vote Vault asks me a question I haven't heard before. After all the preliminary profile gathering questions that I barely hear myself answer anymore, Tom Selleck's voice asks, what's the best part about no longer having a democracy? I ponder for a moment as I match more green marbles on my watch, and then I say, honestly, I don't know. Take your time, Vote Vault says. I say, I can't decide. The Vote Vault homes and logs my response. A tiny part of it grows wiser about my stupidity, and thus the stupidity of one demographic of Americans. Which is great, because whatever logical connections it just constructed, I'll get in tonight's download. 3. The machines used to be for voting, but now they capture and store personal histories. They ask questions, receive inputs, rewrite history from scratch because there is no truth anyone believes in anymore, besides whatever falls out of our own mouths, and can be gathered and analyzed and assembled into a narrative by the Vote Vaults. Someone enters one of the machines across the cafeteria from the one Isabel and I are in. The building is quiet but busy tonight. I called this school Yoga Church ever since they converted all the classrooms to yoga studios. The studios are high-end, thick but lightweight, non-stinking mats, pro lighting and sound and aroma in every room, instructors who don't sweat and whose tones are measured and calm, but not in an eye-rolling way, where you're like, I get it, you love yoga, this isn't about you. Out here in the former cafeteria, things are a little less posh. The lighting is clinically fluorescent, but dim because half the bulbs are shot, so it's like mental hospital in a movie lighting. And it smells like tater tots and cleaning solution from a decade ago. And the northwest quadrant has apparently been dedicated to broken chair storage. The rest of the cafeteria is Vote Vault single occupant voting booths, probably about 40 of them, scattered haphazardly, left over from back in the day. But I download from a different one every time Isabel and I come here, and so far every one of them still functions. Another glistening yoga student on break between classes emerges from the hallway, panting, sipping water, and she ducks into an empty vote vault to start her confession. Isabel and I overhear. She talks about her grandparents, how they invited everyone to the lake house for Thanksgiving every year, how they asked the kids real, thoughtful questions and made eye contact, how she misses them so much. It's not clear if they're dead or far away. You can tell this woman is happy for the opportunity to express a memory and have it cataloged by the vote vault. We hear Tom Selleck's voice say, "Is there anything else you want to tell me tonight?" But the woman has already disappeared back down the hallway to resume her quiet stretches. 4. The machine asks, tell me the top 3 priorities for you and your family in the upcoming year. Start recording. I say, you bet. Number 1, to keep my job, because I am well paid and I enjoy the work. Also, I've been working at the decision consultancy for so long I have no actual skills anymore, besides working there, so I assume I'm unhireable elsewhere. Number 2, for Isabel to be healthy, to one day be capable of sustaining herself financially, and to speak to me again, or to speak again, period, to anyone. Number 3 thing I want, for these algorithms and revised code to download into my pocket drive sometime this century, because I've been sitting here inside this voting booth for 20 minutes already, and my legs are asleep. 5. This is from the front of the Decision Consultancy brochure. Deciding is hard, but the good news is it's also overrated and a waste of your time. We can do it for you and do it better. We've got pro deciders relying on the latest technology to steer you in the right direction quickly and affordably. On the inside of the brochure are photos of relieved and exuberant families next to a grid of pricing options that vary depending on how many decisions per week you're going to want. There's the phone number where you call to ask for decisions and examples of what we help with. Decisions we help with include what to eat for dinner. Is it time for me to go to bed? Whether to call someone back. Should I wear this? Whether to order a pizza. Whether to plant grass seed or have sod installed. Whether I need a massage. Whether to make a purchase under $500. Decisions we do not help with. What to eat in general, i.e. your diet. How to get more or better sleep. Whether to make a purchase, $500 or over. I'm here downloading voting booth code every few weeks now because at work, in our infinite wisdom, we've committed before next summer to helping people with more nuanced and compound decisions, including, should I invite my brother to Christmas again, even though I don't want to, but he's expecting me to? I feel like my marriage is disintegrating, but I'm not sure whether I should care more than I do about that. And is the only way to be sure a colleague or friend is not pulling their punches to get punched by them? 6. This time, after the preliminary profile gathering questions, which I barely hear myself answer anymore, Tom Selleck's voice says, your last vote was 15 years ago. Describe what happened then and how we got to today. Take your time. Isabel looks up from Go Fish, and for a split second I think she's about to say, Dad, and then ask a question, and my heart stops and then does an extra solid disappointment thump when she looks back down. Without thinking too much so I don't skew the logic that's going to get built out of all this, I say, okay, 15 years ago we voted on whether to continue holding elections, the vote vaults tallied all the votes, and before bedtime, we citizens learned we had together decided there would be no more voting. We collectively agreed to ram a banana into the tailpipe of the grand American experiment, and that was that. The machine said, how did you feel about the result then? And how do you feel about it now? I say, It felt like relief, like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. Finally, we could relax. The feeling was, I think, Other countries are doing this better, and like globally speaking, they've probably got things covered. Now I feel more that the relief was a sad relief, like a demented uncle finally dying. It's sad to see him go, but he's been messed up for as long as we could remember. In fact, the kids never even knew him when he wasn't a nut. And it was kind of embarrassing to be around him, and you couldn't bring the children to visit him anymore because who knows what he's going to say. And basically every time you interact with him, you're just reminded of the vast abyss between the present and how things used to be. Although Mom would tell you he'd always been crazy and awful since their childhood, so I don't know. 7. Tom Selleck doesn't have an immediate follow-up question, which is very unusual, and Isabel and Martha are wandering the yoga halls, and so tonight I try something new. I start asking questions. I say, how can I make Isabel talk again? The vote vault buzzes for a moment, and Tom Selleck's voice says, thanks for your question. Progressive mutism is an inability to speak, not a refusal to speak. It is not likely a reflection of your parenting, and it's a trending disorder, but not currently classified by the CDC as an epidemic. I ask the vote vault more questions. I'm not trying to stump it per se, but rather to find that sweet spot where I ask a question that takes just 1 or 2 seconds of processing time that I can interpret as me and the vote vault building a new logic together. At some point, Isabel comes back into the booth and falls asleep with her head on Martha's belly. At some point, I lose track of time, because at some point I notice the yoga hallway is dark and everyone has gone home. The vote vault wants more questions, so I keep them coming. I ask, where would you rather be right now? What is the worst recommendation I could make at work? What is the strangest thing someone has told you? What is the best thing about being you? What do you think about water? As the high, dirty windows in the cafeteria show hints of daylight, the vote vault starts asking me questions again, but they're new and complicated, and I don't know how to answer all of them. Tom Selleck's voice says, do you remember the last words your daughter said? I say, of course I do. Do you remember the last time you knew she loved you? That's a confusing combination of phrases, but yes, I remember. It asks, if you had the most empathy possible, wouldn't you also be unable to speak? Could your empathy incapacitate you to such a degree that your daughter would have to become your caretaker? Or would you two be similarly disabled and need a caretaker for you both? How much empathy should a caretaker have? I am thinking, this is going to be a fantastic download for work. And also, I'm going to be tired tomorrow. But I feel a sense of hope for Isabel and me as my pocket drive brims with nuance and new connections.